These are the last two tests, okay? Let's talk about what we have so far. We have the nth term test, P-series. What else? Geometric series test. Direct comparison test. Limit comparison test. Alternating series test. Anything else?
No.
Okay, so we're going to add two more today. We are going to add the ratio test and the root test. Let's start with the ratio test. So this is section 9.6, ratio and root tests. Why are you taking a picture? Oh. Okay. Honestly, the ratio test could be my favorite. Notice how this one doesn't always give us an answer.
When Miss Winston that didn't apply me, I was like, I said, look in the basic. Literally, tell me about it. She just doesn't want her kid to be told that.
I'd love to see that.
I'm recording, you know that, right?
That's why we didn't
She had to want the microphone number fixed up. Unless we like right next to it.
I would
Yeah.
never say, I can't say the words, that's why I used it.
So if the ratio of a sub n plus 1 over a sub n has a limit less than 1, it's going to converge. If that limit is greater than 1, it's going to diverge. If it equals 1, we know nothing. And you're back to square one.
Her kid. Whose kid? Isn't her kid's name? Is it Juno or Juno? Juno. I thought you said Juno.
Are you babysitting Thursday?
Lauren's Are your kids coming? Wait, I maybe I might.
Wait, there's, oh, wait, you guys can be back.
They're pretty funny.
What would they do? What time?
They get 2 shifts.
They would eat a lot of pizza.
What? Take
Which didn't do that. I watched the last season. I watched all of them. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Ruby. Her kids are, yeah. They were
So you're just saying that.
Okay, are we done getting this written down? Okay, do you notice how there's an absolute value in there? Okay, so this will tell you if it converges absolutely. Okay, so if there's any sort of like alternating or any sort of negative in there, this absolute value is gonna get rid of it. Not super important now, but the ratio test is something that we're gonna use when we get into the power series, which you have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so the ratio test is something that I like to use when you have like a hodgepodge of types inside of one series. So like maybe you have a 5 to the n over n factorial. Like there's like multiple things happening inside your fraction. Okay, that's going to be a good thing to use for your ratio test. Okay, or good.
Anyone ever gonna watch these videos again because you're not teaching us this year?
I don't know.
So we have free reign to say whatever we want.
No, because Mr. Holman's classes watch them this year. They're gone. Write this example down. 8.
You should give these to Mr. Griebel afterwards, so that if he teaches you about
Yeah. Henry, Max, Libby, Molly,
Carolyn.
Kiernan.
Henry
Vote.
Tommy.
Glazeberg.
He's smart. Wait, maybe with Peterson.
Carolyn.
The one in.
Oh, yeah. He'll be in there too.
Wait, how many kids?
Okay. So here we go. We are going to take the limit as n approaches infinity of the absolute value. We have a to the n plus 1 divided by, so multiply by the reciprocal of a to the n. Do you not see how beautiful this is?
No.
Well, we spent some time practicing canceling out with factorials, but let's first think about this. 2 to the n plus 1 over 2 to the n. 2 to the first. Yeah. Okay. Yes. N factorial divided by n plus 1 factorial. Everything cancels except the n plus 1.
So you can cancel.
No, because that would be n over n plus 1. Okay, side note. Yes, we have. Okay. N factorial is n times 1 less, times 1 less, all the way down till you get to 1. N plus 1 is n plus 1 times 1 less, times 1 less, all the way until you get to 1. So the n times blah, 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 blah are going to cancel.
I think I got it this time.
Okay. So what's our limit?
That's to 0. Wait. This is 0.
Yep. Which is less than 1. Therefore, this series converges by the ratio test. So great. Are you taking?
I think the phrase ratio plus two.
So probably not like being together. Okay. Not a good idea. Yeah, that's your brother.
I wrote it.
Yes.
She did. Not a her.
Example number 2. Oh, jeepers. I did for the first one.
Wait, bro. Oh, you wrote it, but it's never entitled. No, it is typed sometimes. I swear. Just not for these, because there's like the whole. So she didn't type out the top. No, if anything would be never. No, so it's like example 1. Example 2. No, it.
Okay, do you see how this series has just a whole bunch of stuff going on?
Yeah.
Like if we had 3 to the n plus 1 over 2 to the n, we can deal with that geometrically, okay? But then you give this 9 squared. And so when there's like multiple types, you see what I mean? Like how there's more than one type of function thrown in there, okay? We want to use the ratio test. So we have the limit as n approaches infinity. We're going to take n plus 1 divided by a sub n. And I just like to write multiply by the reciprocal because I don't actually want to do the whole big fraction. So a sub n plus 1 divided by a sub n. It gets exciting. What happened to what? What? Oh, I don't, what do you mean? I don't know. Yeah, she was always there.
She was always there.
It's got arrows.
This is great.
I just make everything have a she pronoun.
But teachers' ears hear a lot more noises than the normal person's ears.
Is that a fact? Is that a fact?
It's like it's when you're in the environment and you have to be listening to so many things at once, you pick up on a lot more.
You can hear this without their commenting.
Yes.
I could get
Well, one of them is listening to Maria, so. He didn't even hear me. That was disappointing. Okay. Yeah, obviously. All right. So what happens here? We have n plus 1 squared over n squared. How about 3 to the n plus 2 over 3 to the n plus 1? Just 3. 3 to the 1. And then 2 to the n over 2 to the n plus 1 is going to leave us with a 2, but downstairs.
I'm so excited. What did you say?
So
Did you like cross multiply or something?
I put n plus 1 squared over n squared. Okay. Then why?
Oh, okay, I know.
Okay. Then I took these two. Sit right here and take your.
I'm done.
Thank you. So 3 to the n plus 2 over 3 to the n plus 1. When we subtract our exponents, we're left with first power, 3 to the first power. Okay. Then we have 2 to the n over 2 to the n plus 1. So that means there's going to be one more 2 in the denominator.
I get it
Makes
now.
sense.
Thank
Well, that makes sense.
The colors really help.
Yeah.
No, don't do it. You start over.
For real, or are you being, okay. Are you okay with the overall setup of a sub n plus 1 divided by a sub n? So then basically I'm grouping like things together. So this n plus 1 squared over n squared, we can't reduce it, but I know that's gonna help me with my limit. Okay, the 3 to the n plus 2 over 3 to the n plus 1. If I actually perform that division, we can subtract the exponents because we're dividing. And so when we do that, our exponent is 1. Same thing with 2 to the n over 2 to the n plus 1. When we subtract the exponents, we get to the first for the denominator. All right, so what happens with this limit right here? Just this right here. This goes to, nope, 1. So you have n squared, blah, 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 over n squared. Focus. We have n squared, blah, 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 over n squared. So we have degrees that are the same towards infinity. We look at the coefficients. So 1. And what's 1 times 3/2? Which is greater than 1. So this diverges by the ratio test. You know, this reminds me of these colors. Rainbow sherbet.
You're so true. Sherbet?
Where's the R? There's no R.
No, there is a.
There's that R, but there's not.
It's sherbet. Oh, wait.
Okay, third example, write it down. I'm not an ice cream eater. I eat sherbet and sorbet.
Wait, what did you say? Sherbet?
Sherbet and sorbet.
Oh.
No.
Wait, does gelato have dairy in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, is gelato the same as ice cream? No.
They can,
It's better.
it's not. They're made differently. And just like custard is not the same as ice cream.
Is this an example?
Oh, could we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to write this down, but let me just demonstrate how if we try the ratio test, what's our limit going to be? Probably not. I have n cubed, blah, 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 times n cubed, blah, blah, blah. What we have n to the 6th over n to the 6th. The ratio test is inconclusive. But why would we use the ratio test when we can use the nth term test? Our limit does not equal 0, so this diverges by the nth term test. Okay, and this is something that you notice that we have 2 review days before our quiz on Thursday. We're gonna have to practice knowing when to choose which test. Okay. We're working like every section we worked specifically on that type of test. Now we can actually pick which one we want to use.
Are there still gonna be ones where we have to use the test?
Yep. All right, so let's talk about the root test. Excuse me, root test. I grew up saying root, and so I've been trying to become a Nebraskan.
You say roof or roof?
Well, I used to say roof. Wash, there's no R in it. So, I want you to understand that I grew up in, hey, first of all, write this down. I grew up in Southwest Kansas. I was right next to the Oklahoma and the Colorado border. So I grew up very close to the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. So I have a lot of growing up, I've changed a little bit. Because I've lived in Omaha for 14 years.
Wait, how big is your house?
I grew up in a town the size of Grand Island, like 40,000. Yeah. But we only had one high school. Well, there was 2,000 kids when I went through. Our dropout rate was fairly high. We have 2 beef packing plants in the town where I grew up. So,
The shop that's worked there?
Yeah.
Did you ever work there?
no, there are feedlots surrounding the town. So we just said that was the smell of money.
Oh, that's
That's what my
cool.
mom said.
Is that like Conagra? Isn't that the packing plant? Or is it Conagra?
No, we had Tyson and Munger.
So,
Did you have like a big city where you go?
Wichita is 3.5 hours away.
So are we not really like small towns? We're like a suburb, like a city?
how close is it?
3.5 hours. Or Denver was 5.
Is your town like the big, like, were there surrounding towns? Like,
You can imagine like Kearney, North Platte, Grand Island. Like none of them are like big cities, right?
Yeah.
And they're not really like close to like Lincoln or
But like
Omaha.
the towns and stuff are kind of big.
Yeah. That was kind of like,
Did you
that's
have
how
college?
Western Kansas,
Did your town have a college?
community college. Yeah. So I took community college classes during my senior year.
What town did I take my?
Okay, so this is a very similar test. Yes. Well, you are gonna use the root test when you have something raised to the nth power so that the root and the power will cancel out. Did you hear that? What was my suggestion? Okay, if you have something raised to the nth power, it is the perfect opportunity for the root test so that the root and the power will cancel. But it's the same kind of thing. If our limit towards infinity is less than 1, our series will converge. Greater than 1 diverges, inconclusive if our limit equals 1. I don't know. You were looking at me like that. Like deer in headlights.
Oh my god. I just remembered. Hey, looks like the one.
So
That's a compliment. They're so cute.
one time I got a note from a student.
Like a love letter?
yeah.
No. You know when you write notes to teachers,
No.
like for Teacher Appreciation Week on those apples?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Somebody said it made it sound like.
So I got a note from the student and it said, I always imagine like people as animals and in my mind, you are a howler monkey.
Is that a compliment?
I don't know.
I didn't know how to take it.
What would be her?
Thanks.
What's your spirit animal?
Wait, what sign are you?
not June, baby. Okay. Is this sequence being raised to the nth power? Yes or no? We have e squared over n raised to the nth power. Would you agree? So we can use the root test. Why can we not use the geometric test? Because there's an n. If that was e squared over 1, we'd be fine. Okay, so absolute value is really not going to affect anything here. The nth root and the nth power will cancel. What's our limit? 0, which is less than 1. This converges. So we could compare this to a geometric series, right?
Because like if n is bigger than.
Yes, you could do a direct comparison test on this one with a,
I can just reason all these out, but like I can't use the test. Everything's just.
okay. Write this down. Write it down. Hey, write this down.
What's mine? I said. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what's my spirit animal?
You said you were like a rodent or like a cute one.
No, not in a bad way,
Not like a
like a pet road.
Like a ferret.
Like a ferret. Birds are so cute. Birds are so cute. And a
And
hamster-
why a rodent?
A hamster that like runs on a wheel. Like,
Wait,
just like the vibe.
because I have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
All right.
What do you want to be like a monkey or something?
No.
Oh my gosh, that's something I was trying to make the other day.
This sequence is being raised to the nth power. It's a perfect opportunity to use the root test. Also, like you see right away what's going to happen, right? If no, okay, that's fine. So the nth root of the nth power are going to cancel, and we have the limit as n approaches infinity of 3n plus 4 over 2n. Aiden, what is that limit? Which is bigger than 1. This diverges.
Oh, change. Yeah. They all.
One more example and then we can be done. This will be the best one yet.
E.
You. We're just like yelling out random letters. Oh, good. You're starting to recognize it.
Gemini's? I feel like you're not mellow enough. Yeah.
Okay. I'm giving you time to write this down. A lot of you are realizing that this is, well, the limit towards infinity of that expression is e, correct? Okay, now, maybe you didn't realize that this was e right off the bat, and you tried to use the root test. The nth root and the nth power would cancel. Oh, man. The root test is inconclusive, but you all recognize that the nth term test is going to be sorry. The limit is e, which is not 0, so this diverges by the nth term test. So if you try to use the ratio or the reach test and you get a limit of 1, you have to find a different test. And there's really nothing I can do about it. Now, in today's homework, you are going to practice using the ratio, using the reach test. Tomorrow, I am going to give you a graphic organizer, and it's basically a flow chart. If it looks like this, pick this test. If it looks like this, pick this test. And we're going to talk about when would be good opportunities to choose certain tests. There's going to be some series where you're going to have a few options. So sometimes you're going to get to choose one that just makes sense to you, but there's going to be some that are easier to do one way and a lot more difficult to do the other. Like the integral test. We want to avoid that at all costs, right? I can promise you on Thursday's quiz, you will have to do one with an integral test. But there's going to be times where before we had to, now we don't have to. Like 1 over n plus 1. We can do that with a comparison